I needed the failures, and I had to go through trials and tribulations and have my lessons to truly be ready to lead. And if you haven't been through it, how are you going to speak to it? And then you want to keep failing, right? I put air quotes up in failing, because if you're not failing, I don't believe you're trying as hard as you can.
Took a mindset shift from a mentor to get back in that saddle and start winning again. When we look at any type of failure, whether it's small or I lost to a competitor, the mindset that you stay in will dictate how you move forward.
It's really easy to feel like you've done enough when you haven't. It's really easy to get in this kind of complacent mindset to be like, well, I guess I just didn't get it. No, find a way to win.
Step right up, the jury's in. The courtroom of sales is set to begin. Truth on trial, hear the gavel groan. Let's lay the facts, don't go it alone.
Welcome back to Under Oath, where revenue takes the stand. If you're new here to Under Oath, we are the definitive podcast for revenue leaders in the legal space. We decode the entire revenue engine inside world-class sales teams, vendors, and law firms. Everything from intake to marketing, to leadership and hiring, and the technology that drives it all. We discuss it here at Under Oath. We take it to the stand, and we determine what it takes to make a world-class revenue team. Let's welcome back the defense. First, Zach Ramey, SVP of Revenue at Rankings. Welcome, Zach. Myself, Scott Knudson, Director of Sales Enablement here at Rankings. And of course, our ringer, Cole Castleberry, the VP of Sales at Rankings. Gentlemen, welcome to Under Oath. Before we begin, anything to bring to the bench?
What is your best fast food fries? Or just restaurant fries, I should say.
That's a good question.
That's a solid, I mean, there are wrong answers here, so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are answers that would end this podcast today.
Yeah, so tread lightly. This is a hot topic.
Yeah,
So
I'll go ahead and start. I want to start because
okay.
I'll just give my top one for time purposes before we get into too big of an argument. But my number one fry from a restaurant is Five Guys. I think Five Guys fries are superior.
Pretty good. Pretty solid fries.
Solid fries. I don't know
I
if
would
I
say
consider them fast food. Definitely on the restaurant side, but that's an argument for another podcast.
Well, yeah, we'll have another.
My blood pressure's already going up. Here we go.
I'm going to take it. So there are two ways I would answer that question. I would say the best fry, and there's the fry that I crave the most. So I would say that the best fry is probably McDonald's French fries. I think it's just consistent. I think like it's rare that you get a McDonald's French fries. You're like, this is just awful. It's like they're a big for a reason. But the French fry that I crave the most are Chick-fil-A waffle fries. I just, for whatever reason, they have a Diet Dr. Pepper there. They just like, I'm always like, it sounds really good. Is a Diet Dr. Pepper and some Chick-fil-A waffle fries.
See, I'm aligned with you, Scott. Chick-fil-A waffle fries are top tier fast food fries, but I'll also go with Zach if we're lumping in adjacent fast food places. Five Guys, top tier, and I'll add one more sleeper pick. Is I think it's the only thing good from this fast food place, but Rally's fries also top tier.
Are those the string ones?
Good thing from Rally's though.
I know what one day when we're all together, we're going to have to go do a vlog for this and go try fast food fries together.
Rate them.
Yeah.
Or do the blind testing. Like, can you tell whose fry this is?
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be a great one. But great question.
Well, thank you for the
Zach.
fry discussion. Yeah, great. That was good banter. We got it out of our systems. Now, court is officially in session. All right. Now, today's a fun one because today we're going to be talking about failure. The importance of failure as a sales team, as a revenue team. How do you handle it? How do you coach around it? What have you learned as you've failed throughout your career? We're, gonna get comfortable reminiscing on some of the hard challenges that we've had, some of our biggest fails. That's the topic for today. We start with a segment called opening statements. This is where we take a position from our current role. So in my case, I'm in sales enablement. Cole leads the sales team. Zach is head of revenue. From our positions, what's something that we've learned, in this case, about failure, that we've learned through the lens of this particular role? I'll start. This is something that I learned a few stops ago, but it's always stuck with me. Building a culture of normalizing communicating failure and how important that can be and how helpful that can be. At this particular job, we took it to kind of an extreme. We had what was called the fail bomb. And every stand up, somebody, like, we'd have a channel called fail bomb. And anytime somebody made a mistake, they like called somebody the wrong name, or they like totally whiffed it on something. They just be like, hey, this is what happened. Felt like an idiot. And so you'd have all throughout the day, people just like typing all the stuff they failed on. And then on kind of sales stand up, they would say, all right, what's the best one? What's the biggest fail? They get the fail bomb. They get like a gift card for $20 or something like that. But what it did is it made people feel really comfortable failing. And it made you not so self-conscious about it. And then you were able to kind of learn from other people's failures. And actually, I think it opens up this room for growth for essentially everybody doing it. In enablement, when I was kind of managing that at this company, it's okay. And you should find ways to normalize communicating failure. Zach, what about you? What's something you learned about failure?
I actually loved yours, Scott. That was really good. I'm going to take my opening statement from like a actual sales standpoint, because failures can be put in so many different lights. But from a sales standpoint, I look at failure in sales the same way I feel about losses in the stock market. And what I mean by that is you don't lose money in the stock market unless you sell, right? It can go down, it can go up. Like, it doesn't make a difference. You don't lose that money until you sell the stock. So you can hold on to it and it can go above, and then you start making money again. Failure in sales, I feel, is the same way. You truly don't fail unless you said, I'm not trying anymore. And for me, it is about moving forward. That in sales, I would honestly tell people to rephrase it. And it was a lesson. It wasn't a failure, right? I just learned a different way. I learned a different thing I need to do. That way is a little bit longer. This way didn't work as well. So I would encourage people to look at failure more as lessons in sales, because for those who've been in sales is a roller coaster. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows. I wouldn't really call them failures per se.
My opening statement is, I think there's a sentiment about fearing failure and being afraid to fail. And I would say stop fearing failure and start fearing standing still. Because if you take Zach's analogy, which is every failure is a lesson, and apply that, you're not fearing that failure. You're learning from it and you're moving forward, right? So stop fearing failure, start fearing standing still.
And that will segue into kind of our main part of the show here, which is what we call cross-examination. So this is where we're taking the topic and we're just diving a little bit deeper into that. I'll kind of levy some questions to Zach and Cole, chime in here and there, just around the topic of failure. So Cole, I want to stick with you here. And I want to talk about, if you can remember, and this can be at any point in your career or yesterday, if you have a good one, just a memorable sales failure. Ideally, what did you learn that maybe you wouldn't have learned from otherwise just being successful?
I can remember distinctly losing a deal because of follow-up when I was an AE, right? And a prospect beat me to him. I was taking my time, creating the best proposal, trying to get all the data, thinking that if I just prepared, that I would be equipped for this call. And I honestly over-prepared, because by the time the meeting came, they were like, we went a different direction, right? So the moment in failure for me was also recognizing that speed and transparency and quickness, and something I've learned a lot from Zach about responding. One thing you'll know about Zach is if you can barely hit send before the response is coming back to you from Zach. So I took that and I learned from that. And this was when I was an AE at Thrive, is that quickness and transparency and timing really makes an impact to your work. So that the failure was in part a lesson and shaped how I adjusted and went forward with everything I did going forward, which is when you're talking to prospects, speed, transparency, quickness, or just over communication is a lot of times a true value.
What about you, Zach? Can you think of any specific instance, whether it's a seller or a leader, where you fell on your face and you're like, man, that sucked. But you were able to kind of see the silver lining and improve from it?
Definitely one of the biggest lessons of my career that honestly I think shaped me quite a bit, and it was kind of like cool. I was an AE, and I'm sure a lot of people have been there, had a promotion dangled in front of them, right? Like you're chasing something, you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to get this. And then that happened to me, and I worked so hard for it. Like I gave it everything I had to get this promotion. 4 or 5 months of the year, I was the number one rep in the company by 50% when this time came. And I got told I wasn't going to get the promotion, that some just things happened. And I went 2 months without a sale. I would highly discourage that to anybody listening to this. Luckily, I was so far ahead that they were really just trying to get me back on board where I was at. And my leader at the time lived about an hour and a half from me, called me and had me come have dinner with him, took me to a game, wrapped his arms around me, didn't mention sales one time, didn't mention the company one time, showed me he cared, right? Like, and honestly, that could have been a game that was being played or whatever it may be, but it worked. It put me right back on track, right? Like I felt the love. I felt that it's what I needed. And the lesson from that is I felt like I failed because I didn't do enough. And I didn't get this promotion. But the lesson from it is I was going to let one thing being ripped out from under me truly cost me when it came time to get it, right? 2 months. If the promotion would have came up 2 months later, I wouldn't have gotten it because I fell off a cliff. And I let that affect me so much. And as a leader, I look back and be like, why I wouldn't have promoted me either after that 2 month period. It took me another 6-7 months to get back in, the rhythm I needed. And I learned so much from that moment. One is how to be, how to care, right? Like sometimes people are in tough situations. It's more about than just a job. People can be going through things and you need to talk through things or just get a hug, right? From somebody and let them know they care about you. But in that moment, the lesson was I just wasn't ready. I was going to let one small thing affect me so much that I was willing to basically stop working. And what a ridiculous statement it is now to say. But looking back, it was one of the best lessons I've ever gotten. I've been obsessed with doing the job since.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you get to this point where the thing that you want, and yeah, that could be a lost deal. It could be a missed promotion, and you all of a sudden you flip in, and that could be, you could be bitter. I mean, it could be all sorts of things, right? And yeah, your immediate reaction is to like slink down or to get angry and to be like, freaking screw this then, and like you want to process it, right? And you go about it this way. If you were to step outside yourself and be like, okay, here's another rep doing the same thing that I'm doing right now. They fail once and they kind of have a tantrum about it or whatever. Like what's going to happen if they were in the spot and they failed in that spot? Are they going to do the same thing? Right. And you're able to kind of look at your own self and be like, well, yeah, I would be critical of that too. Like I would want them to be able to kind of take that failure and move on from it. Right. And so sometimes it's hard to do in the moment, obviously, but I do think that there is some amount of like priming yourself to be like, all right, it's not if you fail, it's when you fail, it's going to happen. You should be thinking about like, how should I respond to that? What can I make sure that I account for so that I don't fall into this really natural human experience, which is to get angry, to get sad, to close down, to be upset, and to let that affect your job and potentially how people think about how you work, how you act, right? And yeah, I think there's almost like two lessons there. There's like, how could I have handled this better? And then two, you recognize the thing that kind of got you out of the funk, which was a leader caring about you in the right way. That's kind of this next question I had is how do you coach reps? What that's a good example. How do you coach reps to bounce back from a missed promotion, a missed deal, whatever it might be, whatever the failure is? Like what have you found to be effective?
I made a LinkedIn post about this a while back, and I never truly realized how much why experience mattered so much. And looking back is I needed the failures that I've went through in my life to be a good leader, a great leader. And if you haven't been through it, how are you going to speak to it? How are you going to empathize? How are you going to be able to walk people through whatever darkness they could be going through from a personal standpoint, from a professional standpoint. I used to think that you could just do it. And I had to go through trials and tribulations and have my failures and have my lessons to truly be ready to lead. And then you want to keep failing, right? I'll put air quotes up in failing, because if you're not failing, I don't believe you're trying as hard as you can. I think that's how you become the best version of yourself. It's how you learn your lessons. And to Cole's point earlier, if you're scared of failure, then you're scared of growth, because they don't come without each other.
Cole, in your role, right, you do a lot of this where you're probably dealing with more reps on a one-to-one basis, where they're coming to you with these failures of like, oh, I wanted the spot. How come I can't have it yet? And that it's affecting their ability to perform, or maybe not as drastic, but you probably see this more often. How do you find successful ways to coach around that? Like, what have you seen be more effective to keep reps getting back on the horse and not viewing failure as such a detriment?
Absolutely. I think it's a mindset component, right? I'll leverage Zach's statement that he made about his failure. It was a mindset piece, right? Zach felt like he was equipped, ready for the role. He was owed that promotion. When he didn't get it, his mindset shifted. It didn't make him a bad rep, but his mindset put him into a place where he did start failing, right? He went without a sale for 2 months. But it took a mindset shift from a coach or a mentor to get him back in that saddle and start winning again. So I think when we look at any type of failure, whether it's small and I didn't get that set, or I missed out on a deal, or I lost to a competitor, the mindset that you stay in will dictate how you move forward. So I always coach to the mindset that we're in. It's okay to fail, right? What did we learn from that situation, and how do we not do that again? Or how do we overcome the next one? Or how do we beat this competitor when we come up against them again? So I always tend to lean towards mindset when it comes to failing, because ultimately that's what failure is a mindset.
Yeah. I had one of my favorite failures that was, it would have been a failure had my leader not stepped in. It was a, end of the quarter, last deal, last day, 5:00. And this deal was the deal that would qualified me for President's Club. And it was one of these deals that I thought I'd have it. I thought it'd be good. And then, the few days leading up to it, they just go radio silent, just nothing, right? Reach out, call, nothing. And it's really easy in that situation to be like, man, it's end of the quarter. They're probably done. There's nothing else I can do. I feel like I've done everything I can. And my boss at the time was like, well, what are you talking about? Everything you can. Like, these guys aren't very far away from us. Like, they happen to be a kind of local company. And he said, go drive over there, go print out the contract and bring it to him and ask him, hey, let's get this signed today. And I was like, I've never done that. Like, it seems so out of pocket or whatever. He's like, what have you got to lose? You literally nothing. They haven't told you no over email. They haven't told you no over the phone. They'll just tell you no to your face. Great. What's the difference? Right. And so me and a friend, we got some donuts. We printed out the contract and we drove over there. And sure enough, they were like wrapping up. They're like, oh man, sorry, it was our end of our quarter. Like, we were crazy busy. Like, yeah, we want to move forward with you. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, we can sign this right now. Ended up being this awesome thing, right? His mindset as a leader was like, I see why you think you've done enough. You haven't done enough, right? I've been in this situation before where I thought I was doing enough, and I realized there was another angle, right? And he helped reframe my perspective on the issue, which is like, what does it matter? Don't be afraid of getting a no to your face. There is no difference, right? And so he helped. That was a lesson that I learned in a lot of ways, where it's just like, it's really easy to feel like you've done enough when you haven't. It's really easy to get in this kind of complacent mindset to be like, well, I guess I just didn't get it. It's like, no, like, find a way to win. And yeah, I think he demonstrated that to be like, to being that necessary push out the door to be like, have you thought about printing this out? Have you thought about doing this? And I was like, oh no, I guess I haven't. Right. And so I think really great leaders are looking for these points in their reps' failures and saying, I think I can come up with a way for you to win here, so that on the next one, you don't have to rely on me, right?
Scott, I think you're making a great point. And even though this isn't like the overarching failure talk, but something we've all alluded to in this is it's the leader that helps people get through the failures, right? Mentors. Though if you are listening to this and you are a leader and you think people aren't overcoming your failures, you should go look in a mirror real quick, or look at the team that's leading them, because your best leaders and yourself should be able to help people see the other side of that failure. And it should become a lesson, something somebody talks about one day and gives reasons why they became successful because of that. So I think the overarching thing here is it matters who you're surrounded by, who's leading you, who's mentoring you, because that can shape the thought process of a failure.
Yeah.
What a reflection. I'm looking back at all of our answers, and we all learned from a leader and overcame it because of someone we were surrounded by, and then carried that forward. So great sentiment, Zach.
As leaders, how do you make sure that culture stays intact, right? What do we do to make sure that we can always be that person who steps in? Like, what is required of leaders to make sure that culture doesn't go away, seeing as leaders are such a critical part of it?
When you're pouring into those people around you, it's pretty crazy how they start pouring into the people around them. I mean, Cole and myself know each other so well and have worked together for so long, but I didn't know him of the story I'm telling you about. He wasn't at the company I was at, and we hadn't met each other yet. Oh, those lessons that I've learned in those moments and the way that leader taught me is how I taught Cole whenever we started working together. It's how I watch him today pour into people and then some, because he's learned other avenues and things that he's been poured into by other leaders and mentors. And I think that it's a trickle down effect. Like, you are going to act and talk like the people you're learning from. And that is such an important lesson that I think I've learned over my 10, 12-year sales career is there's mentors in two ways. Ones you learn what to do from, and ones you learn not what to do from, right? Everybody has a lesson to teach. It's just if you're willing to take it in and be able to apply it or not.
It's almost like you could ask a leader that reports to you, how are you investing in your reps right now? Like, what does that look like? And I think that's a really healthy way to make sure that culture stays intact, right? If you're thinking at the top, like, what are my leaders doing to make sure they're investing in the success of the reps, not just being like, well, we have our one-to-ones and I make sure they're butts and seats till 5. It's like, well, that's how you're holding people accountable. That's good. How are you investing in them? When you talk about, like, I invest in you, you invest in them, right? This kind of trickle down. What does that look like? What does that actually look like? How do you make sure that you are being cognizant of that you're being aware of the needs of your team? Because as you mentioned before, Zach, sometimes it's just a funk. Sometimes it's some real darkness. Sometimes it's a perspective change, right? And you need to make sure that you are aware of that you have that relationship built. And so, I think a good question, at least that you could ask your leaders or a leader could ask themselves, is what am I doing to invest in my reps to make sure that I can foster that trust so that we can address failure when it comes up?
I think for what you're saying, and I agree with it, is you want your leaders and yourself to be hyper aware people, right? Like, and even though the standard has been set and the number has to be hit, you also have to be able to walk that line of care and showing, empathy and being able to have the hard conversations. We've talked about this in the past, to be able to walk through life with people, right? Work is such a big part of life. And it goes into the metrics that we talked about last week. And it goes into how you lead and how you pour into people. Like, you have to be willing to ask the questions around everything. Give people a day off if you see that they're struggling, right? That comes back. They see the empathy in that. I think there's just so much tied up into a failure conversation that it's so easy to lose yourself whenever a leader doesn't believe in you or doesn't show you another way or show you the lesson to be learned. That's a lesson for myself as somebody who leads leaders, right? That because you have to look at it from a different perspective. Or are they only worried about hitting the number? Are they that only hungry for that? Because you're not going to keep a culture for long, to your point.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I think this transitions well into our objection part of the show. This is where we take kind of a common sentiment, something that's maybe a status quo or an idea that is just, taken to be true at face value. And we bring a notion that we object to. So in this case, around failure. Cole, I want to start with you. What, in regards to failure, what's something that maybe is a commonly held belief that you object to, and give some reasons for why you might object to it.
Yeah, we said it several times on this call, but I think a common sentiment is that failing is a bad thing, and I object to that. I think failing is how you push yourself further. It's how you grow. It's how you learn what not to do. As I talked about, I reshaped the way I communicate with people, with prospects, with everything by watching Zach and having my own failures and taking time to follow up when I was an AE, right? Without failing in that, without losing an opportunity and feeling that pain, I wouldn't have shaped things differently. So I think that failure is a useful tool, right? And I think you can also use failure as fuel. And heck, if you start thinking about failure as fuel, your team starts to get fearless. You start to get fearless because you know that you're just going to learn from that, and you start growing faster. You're hitting better numbers because you're taking more risks, because you're not afraid to fail anymore, because you know that opportunity of failure is going to lead to growth for yourself. So I completely object to the idea that failing is a bad thing. I think it should be used as fuel, and that we should strive to fail in some ways and push the boundaries, and it's okay. So,
yeah, I think you think about something like a BDR making an outbound call. Now, most people don't love making outbound calls. It's hard. That initial fear usually is, I'm going to get rejected. They're going to tell me to, kick rocks, right? And so if you're afraid of that, you're afraid to pick up the phone because you don't want to mess up someone's day, right? You face that fear, right? And the people who are good at cold calling, now the goalposts have shifted, right? So you're not afraid of picking up the phone as much anymore. You're afraid of, after the conversation, that you're not going to be able to convert. And then you're afraid, that starts to happen. You start converting, right? And then you're afraid that something else down the road, that maybe the approach to make them hold their meeting's not going to work, right? And all of a sudden, like the failure parts, they never go away. They just shift, right? But along the way, you've overcome all these different roadblocks that are inhibiting you from being successful, right? And so, yeah, ultimately, like the likelihood of failure, it's always going to be there, but by facing it, you push where you fail down the road, and so by doing, you end up becoming more successful in your career because you're not failing up front where you can't even have the opportunity to convert. You're failing down the road where, again, things might be higher stakes, but you're able to really analyze, like, oh, this is where I dropped the ball down here. You're at the finish line failing, right? As opposed to failing, right off the what is it called that you jump off of in track. The blocks, failing right off the blocks.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you.
I'll give one here. This is more individually. Sometimes it can feel like, or you can believe that when you fail, it means you weren't good enough. And I object to that. I think that the good enough is inside of all of us. Usually failure just means that you weren't really willing to try something that was hard. It doesn't mean you weren't good enough to do something hard. It's just, that's a choice that you made. So it's no reflection on you that like you just were incapable of doing this thing and that like you're a failure, you're not good enough, why even try? It's like, no, usually it's just a decision that we make of like, I was too afraid of something that seemed too difficult. The hill seemed too steep, so I didn't attempt to climb it. And that's why I failed. Right. And so I think it's really important to understand and to separate that, to say like, I'm good enough. I can do this. What I'm fearful of is doing the hard thing more often than not. How do I get over that fear? And this is where I think good leaders come in. This is where good culture comes in. When you see other people running up those hills that seemed too steep, when you see people taking big swings, when you have a leader coaching you, right? All of a sudden, those hills don't seem so steep anymore, and you're able to break these records and do these things that, again, they were inhibiting you before. And so, this idea that you aren't good enough, I think you really want to make sure you disassociate that anytime you run into a situation of failure. It is not a reflection on you that you were not capable of doing it. It's usually a decision you make to not do something that you maybe observed or viewed to be hard. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, in the past, you've asked us to say something like, would you put on a bumper sticker, right? And I think for me in this setting, I would say fear of failure is fear of growth for the bumper sticker. And I think that, so I've been around so many people that failure almost ruined them, almost ruined me, right? I took it that hard. And it was because I wanted the growth so bad, it almost stopped my growth. And it taught me so much in that moment from the story earlier. And one thing the last thing I would say about this is be very aware of the people you surround yourself with and the people that are leading you and who you're taking information from. There's millions of companies out there. There's millions of friends out there that you can find. If you find yourself failing and people are wallowing in those woes with you and just telling you can't make it anywhere, you got the wrong people surrounding you. They should be showing you a different light, a different path, how to learn from those things. I'm very blessed to be surrounded by people that have changed my life over the last 6-7 years. And it's because we look as failures at lessons, and it's because we're shooting for the stars and we want to land on the stars, to Cole's sentiment last week, right? Like at the end of the day, we want to ensure that we're always striving for perfection, but you're surrounded by people striving for the same.
When you set high standards, failure is inevitable, right? Like it's going to happen, but instead of just saying like, oh, it's going to happen, so like we're just not going to make it, you say, no, failure is part of the equation when you aim for the stars to reach the stars, right? So you fail fast, you fail quick, you learn from the mistakes, and you don't give up on failures, right? So I mean, there are just as many situations in a selling world where it by all accounts seems like, well, you failed here, but a rep, because they just didn't give up on it, they put in that extra little shine, and 2 weeks in, we thought we signed with a competitor. We thought it was something else. Actually, we want to go back with you guys. Like we really, and it's through sheer determination, right? They won the deal back.
I have to say this is, how many times have we been impressed by somebody who just never fails and never, like, man, they're just good, right? Like I depend on them, whatever it may be. On the flip side, how many times have we been ridiculously impressed by the person who we said no to a promotion to, that started working their tail off and got it? How many people have we been super impressed with that were like, man, they took that and they just ran with it? Like those are the ones I remember. I know names right now I could say, it's been like, man, that person's dependable. But gosh, that person, when their back's against the wall and you give them the criticism, the constructive criticism, they turn into a different person and they're able to take it and utilize it. Like those are the people I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like we were just talking about this the other day, where it's funny how sometimes, failure can be crippling, but sometimes, hey, no. And it's like, all right, okay, I'm not ready. If you feel like I'm not ready now, wait till the next at bat I get, because I'm gonna freaking smash this out of the park, right? And that's a mental shift, right? It's like, I'm gonna work even harder, and all of a sudden you unlock this part inside of yourself, like, oh, actually, I could have been working this hard the whole time, and that's really what was limiting me, right? It wasn't that I couldn't do it; it's that I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
So
that to me, that failure was used as fuel, and they catapult themselves. So that's a great sentiment.
Okay. To wrap up the episode, I mean, Zach, you kind of double dipped here on your closing argument, where failure to fail is failure to grow, I think is what you said. Mm-hmm. So we'll use that for your closing argument. Cole, what's a closing argument you have? What's a nice bumper sticker takeaway that you'd leave with the listeners?
All right. So winning feels good, but failure builds greatness.
That's pretty good.
Love that.
Yeah. Big fan of that. If you're just chasing the wins, right? Yeah, it always feels good to win, right? But sometimes that can just get a little incremental, right? You kind of hit these little, you end up hitting your glass ceiling, right? But you fail, all of a sudden you pull back and you contort and you stretch yourself, and then after that failure, you smash through, right? And man, how good does that feel when you overcome that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to Zach's sentiment that he brought up about people who have failed and then overcame, and the next time they're up there, it's like the clear choice, right? To me, they were winning, right? They were at the table to be at that next level or whatever it is, but they didn't get it. They failed. But the next time around, man, they were a different human. You're like, wow, like that person is it, right? And that to me is winning feels good, but failing, it builds greatness.
Love that. My bumper sticker will be, this failure could be the thing that turns someone else great, right? It's just like a nice little mantra, right? You failing in this moment now, whatever it is, as you grow and as you develop, you will impart that, what you learn from this in that moment, to someone else. And that may be the hug at the basketball game. That may be the pep talk. That may be whatever it is. And that person's career and growth shoots higher than they even possibly imagined. And so you could be that linchpin in making and fundamentally changing someone's life, right? And so much of that comes down to how you react from the current failure that you're in right now. And so remember that like your impact, it's not just for you. Like you could fundamentally change someone else's life depending how you approach this failure, and that can help weather the storm of the failure and bounce back and get you in a better headspace. If you like the show, Under Oath, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out on social media, where everywhere you can find us, and give us a rating if you like. Share us on LinkedIn or wherever you hear about us, listen to us. And that's going to do it for Under Oath. We'll catch you guys next week. The session is now adjourned.